Things are really starting to get going with our vegetable plantings here at our studio garden. And I just wanted to take a little bit of time and point out some of the interesting things we got going on and show you a few chores that we need to be taking care of this time of the year. Well, to start with, let's take a look at this lettuce planting here in one of our raised beds. We ordered varieties of 14 different types of lettuce this year. We ordered a lot of the leaf lettuce, type lettuce, and some of the head lettuce as well. And of all the 14 different types, all but one germinated very well. And like most gardeners, we'll just blame that on a batch of bad seed. Well, we planted these about a month ago, and we've really started to get some pretty good stands. And actually, these things probably doubled in size in the last 2 days, so we could have been out here and been thinning these out a little bit earlier. But we do need to start thinning them out. And right here is a particularly dark one. It's called Revolution, and it's a frilly leaf lettuce. And these plants are so thick that we need to give them some room to expand. Now with the leaf lettuce, we need to thin them until there's about 4 to 6 inches in between the individual plants. With the head varieties of lettuce, they're going to need a little bit more room, so we need to thin those to where there's about 8 to 10 inches between the plants. Now if we wanted to, with this lettuce that we're taking out here, if we wanted to come in with something like a pencil and just be real careful and loosen the soil and pull these out gently, we could then take these plants and go and like transplant them somewhere else. That way we'd have a lot more lettuce plants, and we could really extend our rows. And we'd get some water on that pretty quick to make sure that it didn't stay dry too long. But that's one good way to extend your lettuce planting. And you'll notice we've got some mulch in between our rows of lettuce right here, and that's to conserve moisture. That's because lettuce doesn't really have a very well developed root system. It's not able to take advantage of that deep subsoil moisture. So once the soil starts to get dry about an inch from the surface, we need to come in and irrigate our lettuce plantings. You know, if we wanted to, we could wash these up and dress up a salad with the lettuce, because lettuce is ready to eat the moment it germinates from the soil. Once it emerges out of the soil, we could eat it if we want to. But we'll let them get a little bit bigger. That way we'll have something a little bit bigger to bite into. We'll take a look a little bit later and show you how these varieties perform. Well, we've done something really interesting with our carrots this year. We wanted to grow some really nice, long, well-developed carrots like we find in the supermarket. Not any that are split or forked and have the knobby or stunted appearance. So we're growing them in these drain pipes filled with sand. Last year I heard about this idea and thought I'd like to give it a try here at our studio gardens. But we've got these drain pipes filled completely with sand until you get to about the top 4 inches. Then we incorporated some organic matter just to help kind of hang on to the water and to give a little bit of nutrient holding capacity as well. Well, up here we've got a variety called Danvers 126, and it's a nice orange carrot. Way over here in this other row of drain pipes, we've got another orange variety, and it's called Chantenay Dark Cord. And here in the center, we've got an interesting carrot. It's called Cuttager. It's actually a white carrot. It's a favorite carrot of Switzerland because it is really good at being able to be stored for a long period of time. So I'm really interested to see how these white carrots turn out. Well, like the lettuce, our carrots need to be thinned as well, especially when they're getting to be about this size. And a good method to measure the distance between the plants is about 2 fingers in width, or about 1.5 inches or 2 inches between each carrot. And that will enable them to develop fully. The carrots that we have today are all hybridized from plants that were originally from Afghanistan. So you can say that the carrot has its roots in Afghanistan. Well, right down here we have another root crop that we need to do some thinning on at this time, and these are our beets. This is one called Kestrel, and it's a very good beet to harvest as a baby beet or when they're very small, and that's because it develops a nice round shape very early on. Well, it's particularly important to thin out our beet seedlings, because when you plant a beet seed, you're actually planting a little fruit or a little cluster of seed. So it's not uncommon to have several seedlings coming up right in the same spot. That was all from just one of those little seed clusters that we planted. So we really need to come in and thin out the beets and leave the strongest, healthiest beet in the bunch. And when we're thinning the beets, it's a good idea to leave 3 or 4 inches in between those, or I kind of go by 4 fingers or the width of my hand, about this far. That way they'll have enough room to develop. Now, as with all these plants, when we're doing the thinning, we usually disrupt the other plants that are in the row. So once we get finished, we need to come back and water in the plants that are remaining. We can see our Bloomsdale spinach is growing very nicely. We're starting to get those real crinkly leaves forming on the plants. And we've really been proud of this rabbit barrier that we've constructed out of this hardware cloth. It's doing a really good job keeping those critters away from our vegetables. Well, not only is it a good time to do all these garden chores, but it's also time to start planting a lot of seed of our vegetables in our garden also. So we're getting ready to plant our squash, our bush beans, our pole beans, and we're getting ready to plant our corn. And I remember Sue Gray always saying, it's time to plant corn when oak leaves are the size of squirrel's ears. Well, right here I've got a little oak branch, and I couldn't catch a squirrel to show you, but I believe these leaves are a little bigger than the ears of a squirrel, so I think it's time we can plant our corn. Well, right over here you can see we've got our furrows already prepared. We're getting ready to plant our corn seed. We'll cover the seed in about 1 inch of soil, and we'll sow about probably 6 to 10 seeds per row. And as you can see, we've got 4 rows that we're going to plant in, and that's important because we need to plant our corn in blocks rather than long rows. And that's because corn is wind pollinated. It takes the pollen from those tassels at the top to make its way down to each strand of silk to develop a kernel on that ear of corn. So be sure to plant your corn in blocks of at least 4 rows. We've also done some interesting things with our potatoes. We've got them growing in these tubs right here. And these tubs actually don't have any bottoms. They've rusted away or been knocked out. And this is really going to be helpful because the way we normally grow our potatoes would be to dig a furrow about 3 inches deep and drop the seed pieces in there and cover those, and then once they start to grow, just keep mounding the soil up on the stems. And that's important because all the tubers that are produced will be between that seed piece and the top of the soil. So wherever you plant that seed piece of potato, your new crop of potatoes are going to form along the stem above it. So you might be thinking, well, why don't you just dig a trench 8 inches deep and put the seed pieces in that deep to begin with? The problem with that is the time of the year we plant our potatoes is early to mid-March, and the weather is really cool. The soils are still cold and somewhat wet, and the seed pieces could rot before they get growing. So what we did right here, we just worked these tubs into the soil. We took the seed piece of potato, just kind of pressed them right into the surface of the soil, and then we added all of this compost, or this organic matter, on top of the seed pieces of potato. And we originally put about 4 to 6 inches, and the studies that have been done on this show that the best crop of potatoes will develop in a layer of soil that's about 7 to 8 inches deep above the seed piece. So we're going to add a little bit more of this compost. Just kind of heel these potatoes in until we get that 7 to 8 inch depth of this good loose organic soil, and that'll provide a really good area of soil, loose soil where those tubers can form. And then when we come out later on to dig into these little heels of soil, it'll be really easy to dig into the area and pull out those potatoes. We'll probably just lift these tubs up over the soil and our potatoes will be right there. Well, there you go. I hope you have good luck with your garden this season, and remember these few little garden ideas.